Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast,
a show dedicated to the realness of organization and entrepreneurship. This space was created for every woman who needs motivation or inspiration to get organized and to keep going after her dream. I'm your host, Angel J. Sit back and prepare for valuable tips, resources, laughs, and much more. If this is your first time here, welcome, and thanks for joining. If you've been hanging around for a while, welcome back, and I hope you brought a friend. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am talking with LauraAura. LauraAura is an alignment coach for driven women, guiding them to learn how to honor their energy and truly listen to what they want instead of what they've been taught they should. Laura is a vibrant speaker, coach, author, and host of the G.L.O.E podcast, a top 100 podcast, and she's an all-around visionary. She'll be the first person to push you out of your comfort zone and the last to hug you as you head to the next level of your life. Everyone, let's welcome Laura to the show. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Hey, I'm fabulous. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we get started?
I think we're just in for a really good conversation, my friend.
I think we are as well, based on everything that happened before we even hit record. I'm just ready to see where this episode is going to go, and we're just going to go with the flow, and whatever happens, hey, that's what happens, So.
I think that's part of the magic, though, is the humanization of doing anything, right? Like, we're preparing to do an episode that's being recorded, that's going to be shared with people. And, while we want to take some measures to make sure that it's a really great thing, human crap just happens, right? Like, we were just talking back and forth and just enjoying each other's company of experiencing human things. And I think that that's one of the things that gets missed in life and business. And so I appreciate being able to walk right into it with you.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. Yeah. I'm just, like you said, human things happen. I was actually listening to my welcome back episode earlier today. And I had said in the episode, I'm like, I'm not editing anything because I just want this to be how it is. And I honestly did not edit anything because at the end of it, I was trying to hit in record and I thought that I had hit in record and I hadn't. And so I was like, oh crap, or oh shoot, or something like that. And so when I got to the end of the episode, like that was still there at the end of it. And I was like, well, I said I wasn't going to edit it. So this is what happens when you think you're not being recorded. So yeah, it happens. So Laura, well, first, before we officially get started, I guess, where are you from? Where am I talking to you at?
I am based in Pennsylvania in the US.
Okay, cool. Oh, awesome. My son has recently got obsessed with Lanky Box. And so he ordered some Lanky Box toy from his Christmas money. And he's been tracking it to see where it is. And it was just in Pennsylvania. So he's been running around. He's like, it's in Pennsylvania. It's in Pennsylvania. So
let him know I saw it go right past here and it's right on its way to him.
Okay, I will definitely tell him. He's gonna be like, really? I'm like, yep, she saw it. It's there. It'll be here soon, buddy. So how long have you been an entrepreneur and how did you get started?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have been an entrepreneur for 16 and a half years. So
wow.
It's been a couple of minutes, not just a minute, but a few of them.
A few of them, yes.
A few of them. So I started my first business was in branding. I've been actually in branding for 20 years. And I started that business when I was 6.5 months pregnant with my son. I was working at the phone book. I'm going to date myself here. I was working at the phone book, the real life, actual pick it up, fold it phone book. As a graphic designer, I designed yellow page ads in the back of the book. And there was something in there where like I was learning a lot, but I just felt this tug for more. And I was like, well, I could start freelancing. So I started freelancing. And long story short, I realized that working at the phone book was not what I wanted to do long term, and made the first gutsy move to quit my full-time job and start my business from my couch while I was pregnant. So that was the very beginning of my journey. It's taken many twists and turns and ups and downs ever since then. But I think that the entrepreneurial journey in its own is that. And I truly believe that the sooner that we embrace that, I'm not saying that hard things are not challenging, right? Like, trust me, I've had more than my fair share of moments where I'm like, I should just go back to work. That would be easier, right?
Right.
But there's just something to be said about the entrepreneurial journey and accepting that twisty, turny road is the life, right? It is part of the journey. So that's where it all started.
Okay. When you said 6.5, I thought you were going to say when you're 6.5 years old. And I was like,
Oh,
teach me more. How did you?
no.
You were serious about this.
Selling lemonade. No, 16 and a half years.
Okay.
But I was definitely not 6. That's for sure.
Okay, got you. So so start off with the phone book and the graphic design. And so do you still do any graphic design, or are you just strictly into coaching now? And if so, how did you make the transformation?
So I'll give you kind of a little bit of a transitional story here.
Transition.
Yeah. So, as I was building the branding agency, I started to really find an interest in the minds of the entrepreneurs that I was working with. So we primarily worked with new businesses or growing small businesses. So working with entrepreneurs every day. And I just always found myself in these conversations with them about the ups and the downs and what made them excited and their big visions and how were they going to do it. But then their mind was getting in the way. And there was just something about that fascinated me. Right. And I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling like this, then surely there has to be at least one other person that feels like this. So I started actually interviewing entrepreneurs on something called the Green Couch Project, which was a literal, actual green couch that I still have. And we just had very candid conversations about life and business. And the more that time went on, it was like this tip of the scale. It was a very slow process because a lot of it was me fighting myself of what I really wanted versus what I felt like, what I had to do or what I should do. But the more that time went on, I was like, okay, there's something about this that I really love. It lights me up in a whole new way. And I shifted the Green Couch Project into the Gutsy podcast because I'm like, I wanted to do more of this on a bigger scale without all the extra overhead. So I figured out how to launch a podcast. The Gutsy podcast now is 5 years old. And through that, then over the years, I'm like, okay, there's even more. I'm like, I've just always been very good about leaning into what feels interesting to me. And that's always led me to where I need to be. Not saying that that's always been an easy road. I think sometimes people, get the impression that doing what you really want means that it's just going to be smooth sailing. And nah, just kidding.
Right.
I could tell you 100 stories why that's not always true. But,
yes.
I kind of got to that fork in the road again. And I'm like, what do I really want? I love coaching. I love speaking. I love writing. I love helping people get out of their own heads and start to actually do the things that they really want to do. And so I literally just recently, within the last, depending on when this airs, very recently, I have just sold my design business, my baby. I sold it. And so it's taking on new wings with a new owner and a new team. And I'm fully focused on doing all the things that I truly want to do in this season.
Okay. How did that feel, like selling your baby, your first business, the thing that started this all?
When I felt it, right? When you know something,
Yeah.
just, your brain doesn't want to admit it, but you feel it in your body, you ponder about it, you just kind of start dancing with it. Mm-hmm. And I had been feeling it for quite a while. And then something just happened one day and I lost my shit, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
I had a absolute meltdown, the kind where you feel like your soul is crying. My soul was like, why are we continuing to force ourselves to do all of this? Right? The thing that I really wanted to do was getting what was left of me. And I had to continue to do the thing that I needed to do because that's what I felt like I should do because I had put so much time and effort and money and I had a reputation and all this, I built all this stuff, right? It seems ridiculous to get rid of something that you've spent 20 years building, but does it?
Right.
And so, after I decided and admitted for myself, I'm ready to start transitioning this, things started to get easier thereafter that. The hardest part is making that decision and really owning it. That's a big one. So, it's come with its waves of grief, of letting something go, but it's also come with so many new opportunities and excitement. And I have this new renewed sense of excitement in my life and in my business again. It's like, this is alignment,
Okay.
to be in alignment, you often have to release things that no longer belong. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but what's the alternative? Keep doing what you're doing and stay out of alignment. Keep thinking about what you want to do. Keep complaining to your friends of why you don't have the life or the business or the money or the friends or whatever it is that you really want. Like, we all have to face ourselves at some point.
Right. Right. I agree. And like you said, letting go can be so hard, especially when it's something that, like you said, you spent almost 2 decades building and growing and getting it to where it needed to be. But they also say reason, season, and lifetime. And so there was a reason that you spent time building that business. That business had a season, and that season is over. And you felt it, you knew it, but you just had to come to terms of when you were ready to let go of it and put your focus on something else. And once you let go of it, that's like you said, when stuff starts opening up, possibilities start happening, and things that you're like, oh, well, I didn't think that this would happen, or I didn't know that this could happen. It's like, well, it couldn't, because you were still holding on to, as you said, you weren't in alignment. You were still holding on to things that were no longer meant for you, or that were no longer serving you, and you weren't free to be open to the things that you now need. So it's a tough pill to swallow. It's a hard realization to come to, but once you swallow that pill and you come to it, you feel much better. You feel much lighter. So
Oh,
kudos to
absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can honestly say that a lot of the stress, anxiety, worry, even the stuff that physically starts to manifest in your body, a lot of that comes from the wavering back and forth. A little bit over here, a little bit over there. Yes, over here, no, over there. Like this literal back and forth. That's where it gets muddy, right? Because you can't move forward on anything when you're dancing back and forth.
Right.
So if you're in that space right now, if you're listening and you're like, I can feel this, you're being asked to make a decision. That is what's going to start opening things up for you. That's what's going to really start to set you free, to start to bring you the clarity, to start to bring you the answers that you're looking for. It requires you to make a gutsy decision so that you can move forward.
Okay. All right. I love that. And so you touched on this a little bit. You mentioned something earlier about wants and shoulds, like wants versus shoulds. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. We could talk all day about this, my friend. Look, we live in a world of should, right? I should run my business this way. I should charge this. I should dress this way. I should show up this way. I should be on social media this many times a day. It goes down to everything. I should go to this party because so-and-so is going to be there. I should go to this family thing because everyone's expecting me to. I should dress a certain way because, if I do what I really wanted to do, people are going to think that I'm weird. I could write a freaking encyclopedia on these shows.
Okay.
But the thing is, we have to start recognizing who we really are and what we actually want instead. Because I cannot tell you how many times I have sat across from a woman, anybody in particular, but I just happen to work primarily with women. How many times I've sat across the table or across a Zoom from a woman and I said, what do you actually want? And it's just blank stare. The answer usually is, I have no idea, or I've never thought about that, or no one's ever asked me. And the thing is, we can't rely on other people to ask us what we want. We have to start exploring that for ourselves, to start owning and saying, okay, in this particular situation, instead of jumping to the answer, instead of doing what I always do, instead of, doing what I feel like everyone else needs of me, because hello, people pleasing. We want to make sure everyone else is happy and content and everything is like in its nice, neat little place. And we don't want to rock the boat. Okay. That shit's not serving you anymore. Okay. This is the opportunity to say, okay, what if in this moment, before I answered the way that I typically would, I paused for a second and said silently to myself, what do I actually want? And if you get quiet and you allow yourself to be still long enough to hear that, you're going to start to get little intuitive drops. You probably actually already know. You've just not slowed down long enough to actually feel it. And so when you start to make every decision through this just small filter of what do I actually want, then you can start to recognize, okay, what's really in alignment and what's not. Because all those shoulds, chances are that's out of alignment, my friend. You're just doing a bunch of stuff that you feel like you have to do. Now, there are things in life that we have to do, right? Like, I should file taxes. Okay, yeah. That's
Right.
kind of a thing. I don't love it, but it's one of those things that just kind of comes along with the game, right?
Yeah.
But I'm talking about just like even the smallest of decisions to the biggest decisions in life. We have to start getting familiar with ourselves because nobody can do that for you. So when you start to do that, you start to act on what you want to do. And you all of a sudden you have more time. All of a sudden you feel lighter, you feel more free, you have more flexibility, you're doing things that bring you joy, right? Like all of a sudden things start to open up and it's like, oh, why is that happening? Because I honored what I actually really want instead. That's magic, my friend. And you literally hold that.
Wow. Wow. I never looked at it like that, but yeah, like I just have wow, that's all that I have. And like it's kind of like what we were just talking about like a minute ago, when you feel like things aren't falling into place or they're not going right, and it's because you're doing what you feel that you should and not actually what you want. And who cares if it's not the status quo or if people think that you're weird, or like be yourself and do what makes you happy, because at the end of the day, if you're doing what you feel you should do, then like you said, you're not on yourself, you're not happy, you're making everyone else happy, but you're miserable whether you want to admit it or not in some way, shape, or form. And so you can't, if you're not happy with yourself, then you're not going to be happy with anyone. And so I really like that. I've never heard it as want versus shoulds, but I think that that's a really good way to put that. So how can we move from feeling like we should to feeling like we can do what we want?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I think the first thing that we really have to start doing is start to acknowledge yourself, right? Like start to notice, because so much of time in your life is spent on autopilot, right? You're just getting through the checklist. You're just doing the daily routine, just making sure the kids are here. You're just making sure the spouse is there, making sure the business thing is there. Like, and then at the end of the day, you might have a little block of time for yourself, and then you go to bed and you wake up and do it all over again tomorrow. Holy bananas. Like now, I'm not saying that stuff is going to go away. I'm just saying that what if you started to be a little bit more intentional about your time, a little more intentional about your thoughts, and really start to notice, how do you feel? How do you feel when somebody asks you to do something? How do you feel when you go to make a decision about something? Like if you're getting ready to post online, just notice how you feel about what you're posting. Is this something that you've been told that you should do? Is this what you actually really want to say, or how you want to say it? What if I infused a little bit more of my personality into this? What if I just started to like slide a little bit more of me, like the true me? And even if I don't know truly who that is yet, because I'm rediscovering her, that's okay. But I'm feeling like, okay, this is not what I really want. So what feels better? And it's literally in these like little micro moments. Change doesn't happen with this big like puff of smoke and all of a sudden like, ta-da, everything's like perfect and better. It really comes from a series of moments, a series of like noticing how you feel. What are you thinking? What are you noticing about yourself? And start to lean into that. It's really playful. We get so like, oh, I got to make a new routine, and I'm going to work out this many times, and I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's so rigid, right? It's no wonder that crap doesn't stick around. Like, who wants to be like, I'm going to do this stuff? I immediately, it reminds me of those commercials where like it's like, I don't know, they're like an infomercial, and they're just they're just yelling at you.
Oh,
right?
yes. I know what you're talking about.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you yelling at me does not make me want to buy your pots and pans anymore. Please settle down, sir. Thank you.
Right. Just tell me how they work and what benefits
Yeah.
I get from them, and let's go from there. But
Yes.
pipe down just a little bit.
Just maybe we don't have to yell.
Right. Like I can hear you just fine without you yelling. So,
Yes. But
yeah.
think about like that's what we're doing to ourselves. We're yelling at ourselves. You should do this. You should do that. Call right now. Do this thing. What if we started to like ease up a little bit and start to play with it more? Right? Like, okay, I'm seeing that this is not working, or this is not what I want, or I'm noticing that I don't feel right in this. Okay, let me start to play with what feels better and just experiment and try and see what sticks. And you're going to do some new things that don't feel great. Okay, that's not the right one. Let's keep going until you get to this point where all of a sudden you have cultivated this like new version of you where it just feels effortless and it's happening and it's exciting again, or it's interesting again. So if we start to play with that and notice that, gosh, we can make so much beautiful change without yelling at ourselves.
Yes, I like that a lot. And it is, like you said, when you get in business or just anything, actually, it's always, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Like, I even know of business people like, oh, you have to post on social media every day. You have to post this and you have to post that and you should post this. And it's just like, it's too, and I've said this before on the show, it's too much to try to keep up with. And it was literally just stressing me out and sucking all the fun out of what I was happy to do, but I'm like, I don't want to spend hours creating content for social media, and I don't want to spend hours, posting and interacting and all this. Like, I want to get out there and build real connections with people. I want to interact with people. I want to create stuff that I know that people want versus creating what people think that I should create on the off chance that one person may like it. Not even that they're interested, but they're just like, oh, let me like this because she didn't have any likes on her post or something like that, And so that's something that, I had to break out of it. And again, just in life in general, it's like, well, I've always kind of been rebellious, I guess I should say, in life in general. It's funny, I wasn't like rebellious with business, but in life in general, people, oh, you should do this. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go do the exact opposite of it, as long as it's not something that's going to like harm me or anything like that. But I'm like, oh, you told me I should do this, and I'm probably not going to do it, or even when people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Okay, well, thanks. Now I'm going to go do it now just because, so yeah, I need to definitely be more like that in my business aspect as I am in my personal life.
Well, if you think about, a lot of that business guidance that you're seeing, it's not necessarily that it's wrong. It's just that it's not right for you. Because a lot of those shoulds are based off of a certain goal or a certain outcome. And if that's not what you're aiming for, or that's not how you want to build your business, then it's just a distraction. It's just taking you off of your own course.
Right.
So if you start to acknowledge and look at things through that lens, that can take a lot of that pressure off of, oh, to be successful, I have to post 30 times a day or whatever the number is today.
Right. Because it changes every day. So every day it's something different. And so that's why it's important for you to have like your own business goals and not to base your goals off of what you see someone else's goals are, because their goals, like you said, their goals may require for them to have to post 30 times a day or interact with 15 or 20 accounts a day. Your goals may not need for you to do that, but because you're trying to follow their business model and what they've put out, now you feel like you need to do that and you're not getting the results that you want from it.
Exactly.
Okay. So how can we recognize when we're kind of like you talked about earlier, it's like you feel it, you know it, but you're resisting it. How can we recognize when we have that resistance going up, and what can we do about it?
Resistance is one of my favorite things to talk about. It's actually one of the things that gets people most wound up on my social pages.
Okay.
Because I often make a video that says the thing that you want the most is often behind the thing that you resist the most.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
And anytime I say that, people are like, well, damn. Because it's true. That's the thing. My style, if you have not yet picked up on it, is I like to just get to it. I like to call things out for what they are, but in a very supportive way to move forward as yourself. So we don't need to fluff things around. We don't need to beat around the bush. We don't need to, put sprinkle dust on anything. Like,
right.
Okay, you want to make movement. The thing that you want the most is often behind the thing that you resist the most. So if you uncover what you're resisting if you uncover what you really want, you can see how you are resisting it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that your desire is to have more downtime, right? Like I just want more white space in my life. I want more time in my business to be able to like create or do what I want, or I just want to be able to have a flexible day. I just want more white space and time in my life. If you recognize and honor that that's what you want, now you can start to see all the little ways that you are resisting it. For instance, packing my calendar, saying yes to every engagement, going to every networking event, back-to-back meetings every single day, filling my calendar day to night. You're resisting having the thing that you want. So people are like, why on earth would I resist the thing that I actually want? Because that's what I want. Because it requires you to do something new. It requires you to go against a habit or a belief system that you have formed, where you probably subconsciously believe that to be successful, you have to fill your calendar. And you can start to see how all of this weaves in together. And when we can recognize that in its own, then you can start to like really unpack it and start to shift it. Because the thing is, again, if we're not noticing, if we have no awareness around what's going on, it's really hard to change anything. It doesn't matter what it is. So I want white space. I want time in my life. How am I resisting that? I'm packing my calendar. Why am I packing my calendar? Because I have a deeply rooted belief that to be successful, I have to be busy and hustling my face off. That's where I need to work. That's why you have not been able to yet achieve having the downtime or the free space in your calendar, because you deeply believe that you have to be hustling to be able to have it. So that is resistance in a nutshell. It really, gosh, if you really get to know and honor what it is that you really want, and try it even just in a tiny area of your life, right? I'm not saying you have to flip the table over tomorrow unless you want to do that. And then that's all on you, have at it. Have at it. I've done that a handful of times.
Clear it off first so that you don't have to pick anything up off the floor. But
I couldn't agree more. I've tossed a few things in my day.
So have I.
But, if you get very honest about what you want, then you can start to unpack and see how you're resisting it. And that is where you begin to make change. That's where you get to actually move forward in your life or in your business, or actually start to have the thing that you truly want.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Laura. I love learning about alignment and just figuring out your wants versus your shoulds. And I know that you have written some books. So are the books that you've written, are they about like getting into alignment? What are the books that you've written about?
Well, funny that you asked that, because I've written one book. It's called Brand Starter. I don't even have it out anymore. And I'll tell you why. Because it just doesn't serve me or my audience anymore. I am an aspiring author, and part of the gutsy move to fully embrace myself as a speaker, a coach, and an author was releasing the branding agency so that I could have time to actually do the things that I want to do, which includes writing books. And I can tell you, my friend, that there are plentiful of them that are in me and ready to come out into the world. And, I've really embodied this part of me for quite some time, even though I say I didn't have the time or space, but I wasn't allowing it. Okay. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But what I do every single time I go to Target, I take a selfie with the new releases section in the book aisle in the back. And I just collect it and I feel it and I lean into it. So, I think that you can be something before it begins. And if there's something that's calling you, start to embody it now, right? Like, do I have a physical book that I could hold up and show you right now? Not yet, but probably in a year I'll be able to do that. So we could come back and do that again. So just know that if you've not yet achieved, accomplished, or even started the thing that you want, it doesn't mean that you're not it already. There's an embodiment period that I think that really helps to facilitate that.
So kind of like speaking it into existence and acknowledging yourself, going ahead and acknowledging yourself as that, because, when you tell yourself something, you start to believe it, whether it's good or it's bad. You start to believe it and you start to become that thing that you keep telling yourself. So
Exactly.
put it out there and tell yourself that you are in the new release section in Target, and I'm ready to see a book with your face on it in the new release section in
Excellent.
Target. Yes,
Excellent.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it. So tell us about a little bit more about the Gutsy podcast. How did that come to be, and just all the
Yeah.
things?
So the Gutsy podcast is hands down one of my favorite things in the world to do because I get to have great conversations with really amazing human beings. And it's like my own verbal playground. Like I'm like, people just keep coming back and there's a lot more of them. And so do you know what? I'm going to tell you something. I have found that the more that I allow myself to be myself, the more successful, happier, and healthier I get to be.
Amen to that.
It is
Amen to that.
it is actually quite simple, but our brains and our life experiences complicate the hell out of it.
Yes, they do. Like I was actually thinking that today when I told you, I was listening to my podcast earlier, and I was actually like thinking about that today, and I was like, on the podcast, I feel like I just let loose and I'm just myself. And I used to always have a really hard time just like laughing at myself, or I would get embarrassed so easily. And like since doing this podcast, I feel like I have just opened up so much more. I don't mind laughing at myself. I don't take everything so seriously. Like if I happen to, do something or say something, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like when I first started the podcast, I was trying to edit out every little imperfection. And then I got to the point where I'm just like, I'm not editing out every little imperfection. So it got like a little bit easier. And then it just more, and I'm just like, I'm just going to go with the flow. And like you said, just be yourself and just let it go. So it feels
Yes.
amazing.
It really, I mean, it's actually quite magical, like
Right.
oh, it actually gets to be easy. I don't
Yeah.
have to fight for everything. I don't have to climb every single mountain. I don't have to scratch and claw up things. Like
Right.
growing my podcast so the podcast is come back to your question. Podcast is now 5 years old.
Okay.
I started it as a transition from when we went from the Green Couch Project to the podcast because there was just a lot of production costs with doing the actual couch filming and editing and audio and all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, how can I do more of this without adding more costs? I will buy a headset off of Amazon and I will open GarageBand and I'll figure out how to record, right? Like I had no idea what I was doing. So I've been able to grow it. It's primarily for driven women, female entrepreneurs. We talk a lot about mind, so much about mind. Like the things that we're talking about here today. If you're digging this, then you'll really enjoy the Gutsy podcast. We talk a lot about business and we talk a lot about just honoring your energy. And over I would say the first 4 years was really about like experimenting and finding my voice. And it's interesting. Like sometimes people will be like, oh, I just found you. And I'm going to start listening from the very first episode. And a little part of me is like, because I'm like, oh, don't do that. But then I'm like, you know what? Go do that. Right. Because without day one version of Laura on the podcast, there would not be year 5 Laura of the podcast.
Right.
Like I've been able to grow my voice, grow my confidence, find my own style of speaking and teaching through my own show. Like the Gutsy podcast literally is this little cushion for me to play and experiment with, and it gets to be what it is. And just in the last year, we've had more downloads in the last year than we've had collectively the 4 years prior.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It made it into the top 100 charts on Apple Podcast. Amazon Music featured it. It's ranked in the top 2% of all podcasts in the world. I think it's doing pretty solid. Like
I think so too. I have to agree with you.
Thank you. And again, that has only happened though because one, the earlier work went in, right? The awkward, like the first 10 episodes, I'm like reading from a script. Like I am not a scripter. Like it is just so not who I am, but I felt like I should, right? I felt like that's what I needed to do. So it's really been about like rediscovering myself and my voice. And as I have become more of just who I am, is peeling back these layers to just be vulnerable Laura, people are like raising their hands left and right because people want to be with real people. They don't want perfect and polished and perfected all the time. Like they just want to hear from people that they can relate to. And if I can hold a space for that and help guide people and help get them out of their own way so they can do what they really want, then my friend, let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do it. That's something that I've been hearing like a lot. And I think that's kind of what's got me more of just like, like it is what it is. We're going to do this and see where it goes. Is that since I've been doing this podcast and like talking to people and just interacting with other business women, they've also, people they want the real you. They want the authentic you. Like they don't want, like you said, the brushed and the polished. And again, when I first started the podcast, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I said this, like people are going to be like, oh, what's wrong with her? And as I just started talking to more people and I just kept hearing that, I'm just like, okay, you know what? I was like, I wanted this podcast to be authentic. And this is what authentic is, it's, oops, I made a mistake here and I'm not going back to change it, or it's me saying, oh crap, when I thought that I cut the recording off. It's little, it's little things like that. And like you said, people do want that. They want the realness because so often we can get caught up with when we see stuff on social media, or even when we like listen to podcasts or anything like that, we just think that they're, just these polished people behind these microphones and that they just have it all together. And it's a regular person probably reading from a script, sitting by the microphone, but they have a whole team of people that come in and make them all polished and, perfect and everything like that. So just be yourself. But I'm so happy for you and the Gutsy podcast. And I am definitely going to add that to my playlist and check it out. And how did you come up with LauraAura? Where did that come from?
Oh, I love this story. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
So it was not intentional. So when I first started my business, my branding agency, I used to go to this weekly networking event, and every day or every week we had to go around the table and stand up. And it's funny when I look at the journey of becoming a speaker, it started that very first day, that very first networking event where I stood up. And when I tell you that like my knees literally shook, the redness on my chest up into my neck, I could actually literally hear my voice quiver, right? Like it was a disaster. But again, without day one of that, I wouldn't be hosting a global podcast right now, right? Like I wouldn't be, I can guarantee you there's going to be a TED moment at some point, right? There are stages calling my name.
Right.
So I digress. To come back to your question, in that group, every week I got up, even though every week it terrified the crap out of me. And there was this woman one time, she came up to me and she's like, Laura, I don't know what there is, something about you. There's this aura, like this LauraAura. And I was like, ding. And at this point, I'm very early on in my entrepreneurial journey, right? Like, I'm like, I don't know what that means or what that is, but there's something to that. So I'm going to let it sit. And it would pop up every once in a while and I would like think about it. And fast forward, when I really started to like acknowledge that like, hey, I am a speaker. I am a coach. I am an author. Like there is this part of me, this bigness, this aura, this energy, this vibrancy that is me, but it's also like attracting these really amazing people that want to be in my world. And a lot of the work that I've done personally is inner child healing. It's working through trauma. It's doing therapy. I'm a huge advocate for mental health, caring for your mental health. And when I really started to like, okay, what is this next phase of my career? LauraAura came back. And in that moment, I realized that LauraAura, this is the part that gets me. LauraAura is the embodiment of all of me. It is my inner child that is healed and has come back in and is part of my world. It's my higher self, the one that's guiding me, the one that inspires me, the one that gives me these downloads. And it is my present day self, the one that's having this conversation with you right now. LauraAura is the embodiment of all of me. And when we're all locked together, whew, like everything is possible. Literally, I truly believe that everything is possible. And while everyone may not have like a name that signifies that, like I want everyone to know that that is possible for you too. That this embodiment of yourself is you. It's you at the core. And that's again where things get to be easier. It's where things get to be more enjoyable. And when I, like with every waking moment, I am more LauraAura every single day in everything that I do. But particularly when I'm speaking, particularly when I'm on stage, particularly when I'm, coaching my beautiful people or creating videos or recording podcasts, I'm just locked into all of me, and it gets to be effortless in a lot of ways. So I get really giddy, and I know you guys can't see me smiling right now, but I get really smiley thinking about who LauraAura is, because damn, I finally get to be myself. And I want that for everybody.
That is beautiful. I love that story. And I'm glad that I asked, because that's an amazing story. And I'm over here smiling, everyone as well. And I'm like one step away from crying, because that was amazing. And you really do have just such a positive aura about you, and just such great energy about you. So that is a perfect name that she gave you that day. And I'm glad that you owned up to it, and that you pulled it out when you were ready, and that it has stuck with you, because it fits you perfectly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we go? Any tips or words that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about wants tonight. So I just want to let you know that if you are listening and you're kind of at a fork in a road, you feel something that's tugging you or pulling at you, you just kind of have that inner scratch, right? I just want to remind you that you're allowed to want what you want, and that your want doesn't have to make sense to anybody. That, as long as you're doing good in the world and causing no harm, of course, which I trust and believe that you are on a path of greatness, that it doesn't have to make sense to anyone or anything. If you just keep following the next interesting thing, honoring what it is that you want in each little moment, I promise you that you're going to get to a result that feels really, really freaking fantastic.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. And how can everyone connect with you? Where can we find you at?
Yeah. So I make all kinds of reels. That's where most people end up finding me. So Facebook, TikTok are my primaries. I'm at that LauraAura. But you can also go to LauraAura.com. It's LauraAura.com. And that's where you can find links to all my socials, to the Gutsy podcast. And if you're interested in working with me, I'm taking on some new clients right now. So it would be a joy to have you.
Okay, awesome. And I will make sure to get that website and the podcast linked into into the show notes as well. So, Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. I have enjoyed our conversation today, and it has just been amazing. And so thank you so much for sharing the space with me and for coming on here.
It's my honor. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modco podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, family member, colleague, or anyone you think will enjoy it. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button. And if you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcasting app. That helps others to find us and gets us listed in other show recommendations. So you all know that I run on coffee, and so does the show. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do so by clicking on the link in the show notes. Thank you so much, and chat soon.